I'll move on then. We went on to the ministerial in London. Now, the ministerial is what this meeting in DC used to be, and I understand from Kelsey that she's explained that connection. So the ministerial now, this year, was held in London. The government of the United Kingdom hosted it, and it was on the 5th and 6th of July. Some of us were, Kelsey and I included, were invited the evening before to a reception at the House of Commons, which was also attended by several groups of victims from around the world that had been brought by the UK government. I guess it's individuals, human rights defenders and others that the UK government has been assisting. And following that, that day, the meeting, the ministerial started on the 5th and 6th. Of course, as all these meetings begin at the very start, of course, there was the opening session with speeches by Prince Charles, by the Archbishop of Canterbury, other religious leaders, and then the focus primarily of the ministerial was on 3 tracks, that of prevention, protection, and promotion. And there were parallel sessions in plenaries, well, they weren't plenaries, I guess they were breakouts, but parallel sessions. And then there were a number of plenary sessions as well. Again, I believe Kelsey also a member of the Council of Experts, right? So both of us serve on the Council of Experts to the International Religious Freedom and Belief Alliance, which is made up of 40-something member states of governments. And the alliance is predicated on the idea that more must be done to protect members of religious minority groups and to combat discrimination and persecution based on religion or belief. And so there were a number of events for the Council of Experts. We had the privilege of attending a reception and at Lancaster House, which is a wonderful heritage property owned by the US government. We also were invited for tea at number 10 Downing Street. There was a lunch with the steering committee of the IRFA and the Council of Experts. And then the US government held a reception. And then finally, the group of NGOs that are working on freedom of religion or belief in the UK held a day-long session on future strategies, etc., on the 7th of July, which was followed by a dinner at the Travelers Club. Now, some of the key areas that were identified at the ministerial to take forward from here on, strengthening legal systems. And the UK this morning as well at an event, Fiona Bruce, the special envoy, mentioned how the UK government is really going to fund the possibility for particular legal systems around the world that might be weak on FOR to be strengthened. And they are asking civil society that might have expertise to contribute to that effort. There's also one about working with young people to inspire a new generation of freedom of religion or belief champions, to make connections between the forgosphere, as they're calling it, and the wider human rights community. So those of us that have been working at the UN in New York, for instance, on freedom of religion or belief, we also sometimes engage with other actors in the human rights world in New York or Geneva. And how do we make the connection between freedom of religion, which is a very mainstream human right, however, sometimes is given a backseat or a side seat. And the civil and political and cultural and economic rights are seen to be a different animal in a sense. So the idea is to create these connections. Another proposal was to have a new network on cultural and religious heritage. Another one to develop 4 resources for children, to make better use of social media to share individual lived experiences, and to introduce FOB into the mainstream media. And then to set up a global network of freedom of religion or belief human rights defenders, and to set up a global network of freedom of religion or belief roundtables. Now, you've probably heard about this initiative, about these roundtables, and if you haven't, you will be, because the planning for that is underway. And there's already talk of one being held in Lebanon, another one in Qatar, some in Southeast Asia, and so all over the world, we will see these roundtables so that those that can't attend these summits and ministerials will be able to engage at local and regional levels. And then there's also, there was some possible plans to champion the cases of prisoners of conscience. Other efforts that came up were possibility of engaging with non-like-minded countries. There are a number of countries that are members of IRFPA and are committed to issues of freedom of religion or belief. And then there are others who, while freedom of religion or belief may be mainstream in their country, but it's not a priority for their government. Or then there are those that could be violating freedom of religion and therefore are not like-minded. So the idea was to begin to engage with the non-like-minded and bring them on board as well, and emphasize the importance of freedom of religion. There's also one of the possible initiatives coming out of this would be to support the development of reliable data and monitoring of fraud violations and early warning systems. And then the use and misuse of technology for freedom of religion. A relationship with humanitarian and SDGs, because again, FOB and humanitarian aid and SDGs in Goal 16, I believe there would be linkages. There was some suggestions to improve religious literacy of diplomats and government officials, because not all of them understand the nuances of freedom of religion or belief, even if they understand the broader issues, which not all of them do. And then, again, to better network for concerned organizations and to encourage states to make permanent envoys, such as the US has Ambassador Rashad Hussain, and the UK has Fiona Bruce, and the Netherlands and Denmark and Norway and other countries also have these special envoys on freedom of religion. And the idea is to have more such envoys promoting FOB, both at home as well as abroad. I don't know if I've forgotten anything. I think I've spoken longer than the 10 minutes I was asked to speak. So
that was great, Bonnie. That was a really great overview. You covered it very thoroughly. I think one big takeaway from that is that the IRFPA, this alliance of roughly 40 countries, has no shortage of ambition. Those are a lot of initiatives that they have underway. They're trying to tackle this issue from every angle, which is really necessary. And so it's exciting to see all the different things. And I think it's a reminder for everyone on this call that there is something you can plug into, because all of you in some way work on at least one of those issues. I will flag the Prisoners of Conscience group because Dr. Tong and I will be helping to spearhead that. And so for everyone on this call, please send prisoners of conscience based on religious issues our way. We want representation from all religious groups. On the issue of representation, I did get some statistics back from the IRF Summit. They had over 40 separate faith groups present, and I didn't get statistics from the ministerial, but I believe it was the same. So one great thing we're seeing from both of these conferences is that they really have an incredible diversity of representation of religious groups around the world. And then the only other point I'll make is that next year, Brazil has agreed to host the ministerial. As I mentioned, they were not able to in 2021. And so at the very end of the ministerial in London, one of the Brazilian government officials stood up and said that they have received the green light to move forward with 2023. And I think there will be a large civil society component. So hopefully many of you will be able to attend that conference. So again, thank you, Bonnie. We will turn it over to you all now. Feel free to ask Dr. Tong, Loen, or Bonnie any questions you might have. Also feel free, as I mentioned in the email, to bring to our attention any new issues relevant to this International Day, issues of violence against religious minorities that we might not be aware of, or take the opportunity to commemorate a victim and honor them and what they've done. So I'm opening up the floor. I did see at least one or two hands up already. My arrow is covering names here, so I'm going to have to reconfigure my screen. But Sufi, I believe you were first in terms of having a hand up. Yeah. So if you'd still like to speak, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kelsey. I really appreciate that, and this is wonderful. And I was noticed this when first time announced this August 22nd. And I'm very much involved against the violation, the human rights, especially the religious related in Sindh region of Pakistan. Hindus are actually and blasphemy, also the forced conversion of the Christian girls, and you must be aware about the Sri Lankan guy when was over there, how they killed him. And I am actually this upcoming General Assembly. During that time, I'm going to the hunger strike for 7 days from September 13th to September 20th. And the one of the top issue, which is my part of the hunger strike, is the religious extremism in the Sindh region of Pakistan. Even today, yesterday, is events happen. If you not much cover in the mainstream media, but you must be aware about it. I have just request humbly to Bonnie and Kelsey, what kind of help you guys can to do. Means when I'm doing the hunger strike from September 13th, I will be empty stomach 7 days without any food, just with the water, no juice or anything. I really appreciate if you can help me in this regards. Thank you very much.
One thing we absolutely can do is send out information to the larger committee. So anything that you'd like us to share, please feel free to send to the email address that you used to register for this event, so we can get the word out about the initiatives that you're working on.
I will send it to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And then for others, feel free to just raise your hand using the little reactions raise hand feature. Or Daniel, just raise your physical hand. Those are always good too. So here,
that
over
works.
to you.
And Bonnie, I'd really be interested in hearing your take on customary international law and international standards and the erosion of that. We had a wonderful presentation at the UN Forum by a lawyer who explained to us what customary international law is. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a lot of United Nations programs like UN Forum depend not on written codified treaties and laws, but we look at each other's nations and we say, okay, there is an international standard of how we all behave. And what nations like Iran do when they are abusing religious minorities is they say, well, look at, and I don't want to insult other countries, but they look at a long, long list of other countries that are discriminating against religious minorities. And it's so frustrating. And I'd like to hear you talk about how this has changed your advocacy with the government of Iran, if it has at all.
Sure. Thank you. That lawyer was Brian Leopard, I believe, and he's a professor of international law at the University of Nebraska. I remember that talk as well. In terms of Iran or any country for that matter, the defense every country normally takes is these are internal matters. We do not violate freedom of religion. These individuals, whomever they might be, are criminals. And in Iran's case, it could be insulting God, to spying, to creating, working against national security, whatever that means. And China and other countries that have their own explanations, whatever they might be. So the bigger issue is that all these countries have committed to uphold the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Most of them have signed on to the Bill of Human Rights, which includes the Universal Declaration, but also the international covenants on civil and political rights and economic, social, and cultural rights. So they have responsibilities to uphold the human rights of their citizens, including ethnic minorities or religious minorities. And it is a government's role. So even if the government is not perpetrating the violations, in some cases it could be civil and social unrest in a country. But it's the government's role to protect all of its citizens, let alone go after them. So yes, to shorten my answer, it's difficult when a state itself is perpetrating the violations, to hold them responsible. It calls for the entire international community to rally and to speak out. And that's what's important. And for media to speak out. Somehow, freedom of religion or belief issues aren't if I may use the term, the sexy human rights again for the media, because they will cover political dissidents, they'll cover cases of imprisonments and police beatings, etc. But somehow FORB is not one of those that get front page news on a regular basis. And also, if there's a particular violation going on, it's long and slow. So it's 2 people one day, 3 people the next day, and the media doesn't see, though we reported this last week, we're not going to report it next week. And so it is a big problem. However, it really, in some parts, in many parts of the world where this is taking place, it really, weakens the social fabric. So wherever there might be violation of freedom of religion or belief, you can imagine that society cannot be very strong and united. So I think it's in the interest of the governments to promote FORB.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Daniel. Bonnie, thank you for your answer. We've seen even when the media is covering FORB situations, sometimes they don't do it in a FORB lens. So last week there was a very well documented burning of a church in Egypt that did get a lot of attention from the New York Times and others, but it was all within the framework of perhaps there was some sort of building code violation, or perhaps this was some electrical issue. And since then, 4 other churches have caught on fire. And so we feel pretty confident that this was not some sort of mere electrical problem. And yet that side of the story has not been reported. The tragedy has, which is that many lives were lost, and we're glad that that got publicity. But the FORB angle really has been missing in large part. Arvin, dear, we're going to turn to you, and then I think we'll have time for at least one more hand after you.
Thank you so much. My question is for Bani and for you, that the organizations like Amnesty International, they also publish their reports and give it to the governments, and usually the response of the government is that, yes, this is our internal matter, and there's a very good system of checks and balances because we are a democratic nation. So, and it doesn't make too much headway then. And I think Bani also mentioned that one very important thing, that it's very important for everyone to speak against injustice to anyone, because it divides your community in the long term, the society in the long run.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I'd love to hear from you as well, Bani. I mean, one thing that we're definitely seeing in cases that we work on around the world is that there's no shortage of different types of crimes that the government accuses religious minorities of. And sometimes they don't even present evidence of the crime. So in Turkey, we have religious minorities being deported from the country, being banned from entering the country, and they're told that they've been caught up in some sort of national security situation, but they don't present any evidence of what it is that they've done. And so these are highly difficult types of cases because you're disproving something that's never even been presented to you. And as Bani already mentioned, there are so many other types of crimes that governments can accuse religious groups of. And so, groups like BPSOS, I think, are doing a fantastic job of documenting what it is that people are being charged of, what the actual evidence is, and being able to share this very rigorous documentation with the international community. And what's also, I think, very helpful is sharing notes with many other religious groups. And so, we've been tracking, for instance, a situation in Algeria with Christians, but when we look at the Ahmadiyya, for instance, also in Algeria, experiencing similar things, we start seeing trends, and we start realizing this is not about one community violating building codes necessarily. This is about a crackdown on religious groups who don't conform with the majority religious positions. And so when we can all sort of work together with different groups, we can show that this is systematic, and it's not about small groups here who aren't conforming with the laws, but they're actually being attacked. Bani, I'm sure you have something to add to that.
You did a great job. We have similar issues in Qatar. It's a small community, and again, the same thing. Their work permits are denied, or if they reach a certain age, they say, now you've aged out and you have to leave. There's a whole pattern of means by which a government can begin to eliminate individuals of a particular group or another that they want. So.
Yeah, thank you. We are just at time now, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. I did flag in the beginning the very few announcements we had. I will just, for those of you who might have joined a little bit late, I will reiterate our general annual meeting will be in person in New York. Bani has graciously agreed to host us at the Baha'i International Community Center across the street from the UN. And this will be on October 12th from 1 to 3 with lunch. We will also have a virtual component. So if you can't join us in person, feel free to join virtually, and then save the date around October 25th. We don't know an exact, it could be the day before, it could be the day after, but when our new Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Religion or Belief, Dr. Nazila Ghanea, will be presenting the former Special Rapporteur's report. And then again, you will be receiving an email with regard to dues for the committee to be a member in good standing. So as soon as we get a little bit more information about the upcoming fall events, we'll be sending those out. We hope you can join us in person or virtually. We look forward to starting to gather again soon. So thank you again for joining. Thank you to all of our speakers, and we should you'll be hearing from us soon.